Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about visual impairments, including blindness. We'll have some definitions for you as well as examples. We'll also talk about how we as teachers can make a learning environment that is inclusive for everyone and try to best fit people with vision impairments and blindness. To give us a definition of vision impairment, we turn to the World Health Organization, which says that vision impairment is an eye condition that affects the body's vision system and vision function. Blindness is the inability to see or the lack of vision. In severe cases, there is also inability to see light. Vision impairment and blindness can be caused by these five following things: refractive errors, cataract, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, and macular degeneration. The next slides will go into detail about each of these five, including causes and fixes to these. Refractive errors is when the eye cannot focus light directly onto the retina. This inability to focus causes blurred vision. Light enters the eye and bends the focus into the retina. When this doesn't happen, the retina is unable to send signals up to the brain. This can cause nearsightedness and farsightedness, as well as astigmatism. Corrections for this include wearing glasses, contacts, and at some point having vision correction surgery. The next visual impairment that we're talking about is cataracts. Cataracts is when the lens of the eye, which is in the front just behind the iris, is a little bit blurry. This condition can be treated with surgery, which replaces the lens with an artificial one. Diabetic retinopathy is complications with diabetes, which causes damage to the blood vessels. Mild cases can be treated by managing the diabetes. Other times, surgery is required. Our fourth visual impairment that we'll be talking about is glaucoma. Glaucoma has to do with damage of the nerves that go from the brain to the eye. This leads to an inability from the brain to send signals back to the eye and kind of looks like you're looking through a tunnel. Later on in the presentation, we'll look at an example of what glaucoma looks like. This can be treated with eye drops, medication, and sometimes surgery. Macular degeneration is the fifth and last visual impairment that we will talk about today. Macular degeneration is loss of vision at the center of the eye. Unlike glaucoma, which is on the outside of the eye, macular degeneration is in the middle. This causes a lot of blurred vision and can be treated with vitamins and minerals. We will now discuss the characteristics of vision impairment, including blindness. Vision is our most dominant of our five senses. Vision has to do with walking, driving, reading, learning, and other daily tasks. Think for a second how your daily life would change if you had blurred vision or a vision impairment each day. Negative consequences of not addressing this include social emotional well-being, a lot more stress, anger, and frustration throughout your daily life. As we discussed earlier, macular degeneration looks like there is something in the middle of your eye. So imagine trying to read, write, drive, or walk if this was your vision all day. Unlike what we're about to see in glaucoma, macular degeneration is at the center of our eye. This is an example of glaucoma from Perkins School of the Blind. As I previously discussed with glaucoma, some people have said it's like looking through a straw or looking through a tunnel. The outside of the eye has been covered up, so you can only see through the center of the eye and a little tunnel vision through here. This next slide, we'll be talking about how teachers can help. So, knowing some of the warning signs of vision impairment, including squinting or students not being able to properly read. When we know this as teachers, it is our job to notify the admin and the parents to make sure everyone is on the same page and knows the situation. If this is known, students can go to a preferred seat that is closer to the board. If you're giving out assignments, larger text should be printed as worksheets for your classroom. Other ways that we as teachers can help individuals with visual impairment include encourage vision testing. Students who need glasses wear them. This is something especially at the elementary grade level, making sure students are wearing their glasses when they're needed. Audio and braille books should be available, and tests or assignments are read out loud to your students. The next 5 slides will show us as teachers how we can improve our classroom to make sure that people with visual impairments are still included in our classroom. As you can see on the board, I have examples of 6 letter A's with font size stemming from 6 all the way to 120.
When someone has a visual impairment in your classroom, it'd be ideal for you to get larger font so they can read your papers and work.
Preferred seating is an easy way to accommodate students in your classrooms who have a visual impairment. If you know certain students are visually impaired and need glasses or contacts, it would be smart for you to move them closer up to the whiteboard or blackboard, whatever you are using in class for that day. Students who are not visually impaired can go a little closer to the back of the class. Attached is another accommodation that you can use in your classroom, which is a Braille translator. What I recommend as a teacher is to have certain worksheets printed out in English and others translated into Braille for people who have visual impairments to the point where they are blind. This would be similar to an ESL student where you can have one side in English, the other side in Braille. Another accommodation that you can have for your class is to make sure that you have audiobooks available. If you are reading a certain book in class, it would be smart for you to have the audiobook for people with vision impairments. Another accommodation you can have is anytime you are taking a test, that the test questions and answers are read out loud and read to the people with visual impairments.
Another way that we can help our students is by communicating with their parents. If we can tell that someone in our classroom is struggling with visual impairment, it is important for us to communicate that with our parents so they can go to the doctor and get an eye exam. Our students should be getting an eye exam roughly every 2 years, and this can be as simple as going to the eye doctor for about a half an hour and getting tested to make sure everything looks good. Visual impairments can have an effect on our classrooms. Four ways that these visual impairments can affect it is by having our students not be able to see the smartboard, reading difficulties, frustration and anger, and confidence. When students are unable to see, it can really frustrate them and make it difficult to have a proper learning environment. These are four ways you can differentiate your teaching to make sure any learning activities you have are still inclusive of people with visual impairments. If you have a PowerPoint slide, make sure you're using not 12-point font, but a little bit larger so everyone can see it. This will go the same for any handouts and worksheets that you have. For some students, it's okay to use 12-point font, but for others, you want to make it a little higher so they can go ahead and see it. Provide audiobooks when you're trying to teach lessons, and utilize Braille whenever it's possible. Management needs for students with visual impairment include giving the student extra time on tests or exams, having the tests read to them, large print tests, smaller class sizes, and having multiple teachers. This can happen all the way up to the New York State level, where even on the Regents exams, you can have these accommodations for students with visual impairments. It is important to collaborate with other areas of the school, including a special education teacher who can assist with the lesson planning and support the student, a guidance counselor or psychologist to make sure the student's social emotional needs are being met, and other teachers who teach the student. All teachers should be aware of the student's condition and how to best support this student with a visual impairment. It is important for teachers to know that there are helpful organizations outside of the school that can help with any visual impairments or services. For this one, we went to Spring Valley, New York, at a place called Visions, which helps in services such as vision rehabilitation, job training and placement, youth services, and community outreach. Another organization that we discovered was the American Council of the Blind. These services that are provided include scholarships, advocacy, and accessibility services. Make sure you find an organization close to your community that can help you and your students best thrive in the classroom. To bring this slide all together, I wanted to make a conclusion slide about what we learned today. One thing that is very common in your classroom is going to be visual impairments. As we said earlier, visual impairment is at a big spectrum stemming from slight farsightedness, nearsightedness, all the way to complete blindness. With that being said, there are easy fixes in your classroom that you can use, including larger text size, preferred seating, audiobooks, braille, and many more. The last key that I wanted to bring up is that communication is very important. If you can see that a student is struggling in your classroom, it's important to communicate with both them, parents, and administrators of your school to make sure your classroom is providing the correct accommodations and that they are getting tested regularly to check their eyes and make sure they have their glasses or contact lens that are needed. Some other remarks as our conclusion include asking for help. There are so many organizations and other teachers and services that want to make sure your classroom is as inclusive and accommodating as possible. It's okay to reach out and try to ask for help and see what works best for your classroom. Use the tools that are provided. Some of the tools that I brought up today include the Braille translator, audiobooks, enlarging text sizes, and many more. Another thing that some teachers may struggle with is that, yes, it might be a little more work, but embrace the inclusion in your classroom and try to make it as accommodating as possible for all students. The extra work of increasing the font size on your PowerPoint or providing the audiobook could be the difference for many students in your classroom succeeding and thriving compared to getting frustrated and overwhelmed.